Aeroe Bikepack recently sent me one of their spider racks and bags to test out and review. In this video, I'll provide an overview of the system, a how-to and installation, and my general thoughts and impressions after having a chance to take it out to Galiano Island for an overnighter. The Spider Rear Rack is a universal rear mounting storage system that is designed to attach to all kinds of bikes without the use of mounts or eyelets. The rack is rated to hold up to 15 kilograms. The rack attaches to the top of the seat stays using two mounting brackets and is fastened with two nylon straps on each bracket. Aeroe claims that the stable design results in no rear sway and is ideal for full suspension mountain bikes as there are no issues with a moving rear triangle. The rack comes with one cradle and can accommodate up to 3. The cradles can be rotated 90 degrees to accommodate other racks on your bike, as well as a dropper post. Aeroe makes both 8 and 12-liter dry bags that have loopholes to securely attach them to the cradles. I've gone with the 12-liter bags in black to match my bike. The dry bags feature a roll-up top with a buckle and are fully waterproof. Aeroe also makes a waterproof 11-liter quick-release pod. The pods open and close with a zipper, and inside the pods there are internal straps to help secure cargo. They attach via a uni-mount that rotates on a swivel. They can be quickly released at the pull of a strap to take with you as you please, and then reattached the same way. For installation, you will need a 5mm hex wrench. All bolts can be tightened to 4 Newton meters. First, place the mounting brackets on the top of the seat stays, and connect the straps to the lugs on each side of the mount. Aeroe suggests tightening 2 straps on one side of the bike, first to about 75% of max torque, before moving on to the other mount. You may have to adjust the angle of the mounts depending on the distance between and the angle of your seat stays. You'll see here that I'll have to adjust the angle of the mount a bit inward. Untighten the bolts on the side of the mount to loosen the arm and rotate the mount as needed. The legs of the rack can be pressed in or out about 20mm each way to suit the width of your seat stays. Once again, attach the 2 straps to the lugs and tighten to specs. You can slide the arms of the rack down to suit your preferred height. Ideally, you would want it to be as low as possible to ensure a lower center of gravity. Aeroe told me that you can cut off the ends of the arms if needed to lower the rack a bit more, but I think this is pretty low enough. Once you have everything in position, tighten all the bolts to the max torque. To install the cradle, first remove the 4 bolts on the face of the cradle. Remove the back of the mount and select the angle that you would like to mount it at. The cradle can be mounted either parallel to the arms of the rack or perpendicular to the arms of the rack. Once you've found the appropriate height and angle on the arm rack, tighten the bolts to max torque. To install the uni mount for the quick release pod, first remove the 4 bolts on the face of the mount and install on either the top or side of the rack. I've chosen to put this on the top of the rack. Tighten the mount to max torque and then slide the pod onto the mount until it locks. Pull on the strap to adjust the angle of the pod. The mounting bracket will lock into place every 15 degrees. Strapping in the dry bags on the cradles is pretty straightforward. Place the straps through the loops on the bags and pull on the straps to tighten them until the bag is firmly secure. Hey, so installation was pretty straightforward. I still have some angles to play with on the cradle and the racks, but it's looking pretty good. Looking forward to taking it out for an overnighter and do some field testing.
I just It is a torrential downpour. One more big climb before the campsite.
After having a chance to take the rear rack and the gear out on an overnighter, I can say I'm very impressed with the system. It's extremely stable, I didn't notice any sway, and it never moved at all. I think the real winners of the system is the rack and the cradles themselves, especially when you consider price, quality, and weight compared to a traditional rear storage rack and pannier system. It's something I'm really excited to use for off-road bikepacking. Before I dive a little bit deeper into the rack and the cradles, I want to discuss some thoughts on the pods and the dry bags. If I was given a choice between the cradle system or the pod system, I would choose the cradle system every time. I prefer how the dry bag system allows you to compress and store more stuff inside them, when compared to the pods that need to be zipped up. When I was using the pods in the field test, I was wondering what I should be storing inside them, and I don't think I used them to their full capability. The pods are a little bit more on the expensive side too, at $165 each. There are a few instances in which I think the pods could be preferred over a dry bag setup. For example, when you want to carry a camera or laptop, something that needs a bit more protection and needs to be strapped down rather than just stuffed into a dry bag. Aeroe's dry bags are also a little bit on the expensive end. At $90 for a 12-liter dry bag or $75 for an 8-liter dry bag, I think you could probably find a little bit cheaper alternative. For example, I use a 10-liter dry bag on my handlebars from Sea Lion that costs about $30, and this has stood the test of time. The quality of Aeroe's bags are really top-notch, but I'm just not sure it justifies the extra cost, even though it has specific loopholes on the bags. There is something to be said about knowing that you have bulletproof gear when you're on a trip, especially if you're far from civilization, and I do want to recognize that not all bags are made the same. I've been burned before by low-quality bags from Mac that have ripped a few days into a trip. Here's a bit of a deeper dive into my thoughts on the Spider Rack. This summer, a friend and I are going to bike 1,000 kilometers to the Arctic Ocean. At one point, we'll have to carry about 7 days worth of food. I'm really excited to be able to use the Spider Rack to increase the volume on the rear of my bike, while still having something that's more stable than a traditional rack and pannier system. While the Spider Rear Rack is rated to hold up to 15 kilograms, I was initially a bit hesitant to put that much weight on the back, as it's directly supported by the seat stays. On a traditional rack and pannier system, that weight is more spread out and is also distributed on the seat post tube. When we arrived at Galiano Island, we ended up picking some beer and wood, most of it which I carried on the top of the pod, which was mounted on top of the rack to the campsite. I'd estimate with the wood and the beer, I had maybe 12 kilograms on the back. Once again, I had no issues, and I was very happy with how it performed on the rest of the trip. I've done a fair bit of touring with a traditional rack and pannier system, which I think is the best comparison to make in terms of my experience with the Spider Rack. While you might be able to carry a bit more with the rack and pannier setup, I've always found it to be pretty bulky, and it affects the stability of the bike, as items tend to shift and move within the panniers. With the Spider system, that is mostly eliminated, as your gear is more securely attached to the cradles. My initial impressions with the Spider Rack was that it's a bit expensive and on the heavy side. However, that changed once I began writing this review and looking at alternatives. Let's compare the price and weight to a similar rack and pannier system. The total weight of a Spider Rear Rack setup, including 2 cradles and 2 12-liter dry bags, is 1.9 kilograms, or just over 4.2 pounds. This is at a cost of $445. When we compare that to a similar waterproof alternative, such as a set of Ortlieb 12.5-liter panniers, you get a total weight of 2.7 kilograms, or just about 6 pounds, at a very similar cost of $450. So the volume that you can carry is pretty much the same, The weight of the Spider Rack is about 50% less, and the price between the two is about the same. Of course, it could be a little bit cheaper if you bought non-Aeroe dry bags. So how would I see myself using the Spider Rear Rack, and what are its practical applications for adventure cycling? If you do a fair amount of off-road touring or bikepacking on mountain bike trails and are looking to carry a bit more in the rear of your bike, then the Spider Rack's a great alternative to rack and panniers. Personally, I don't like storing weight on my forks. I've used fork cages previously, and I don't like how it affected the steering, so I'm really excited to use the Aeroe Rack on this upcoming trip. I'll note that most of the terrain we did on our overnighter was on pavement and unpaved bike paths, so I can't speak specifically to how well the rack will handle on rough terrain. However, I'll plan on doing a long-term review once we return from our bikepacking trip up to the Arctic Ocean. So that concludes my review of the Spider Rear Rack. I'm really looking forward to using it. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below, and thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.